Minnesota Liberty, sponsored by the Libertarian Party of Minnesota. We are here this evening with TJ Hawthorne, Kevin Bradley, and Joy Gamache to do just a roundtable discussion of some things that have happened this week. Talk about school lunches, free childcare. I don't know. There's, a whole bunch of things going on. So there you go.
Hey, evening, everyone. So let's start off with chatting about those free school lunches that our government decided to tax Minnesotans. And what does that really entail? What does that mean? We were just looking it up, free breakfast and lunch, actually, right? And so how much is that costing? And my first thing when I think of things like that, this is the racket that's about to start with who delivers the food, who brings all these things in, right? Has this been, I'm sure it's been lobbied by Cisco or somebody like that, right? That's where my mind goes first when something like this gets enacted. Like, here's a law that the government is guaranteed to provide something. Then the second place my mind goes is the quality of that is going to go down. And that's always been the case with anything like that. So what do you guys think of this? And I'd like to hear your thoughts.
Well, I know, because we're up in Bemidji, right? So Bemidji tends to be kind of a lower income county. We already had a significantly high proportion of free meals for, if you went to public school. And, it's not just public school students. So you can actually, because we're a homeschooling family, you can take advantage of the free meals as a homeschooling family too. All you have to do is fill out the application, right? And that is because that when we do homeschool, we have to register with the school district regardless. And so that's part of the, the paperwork.
Compulsory.
Yeah. Yeah. And we have access, homeschoolers have access to the public school programs which they're fine with, because every time that we, do something with the public school, they get money for it. Right.
Well, there can't be any discrimination, so they have to be inclusive and let if you're doing this on your end, so you have to be part of that program as well. And that kind of makes me think of the voucher system. Then, if they were going to go with a voucher, right, where you get some kind of credit, how that can be segued.
Yeah. And this would probably conflict with school choice in the future. I mean, then you'd have to come to terms somehow with the free lunch program. With there even being a possibility of a school choice in Minnesota, which, I mean, the likelihood of that happening when we have a deeply entrenched blue state right now is pretty slim, but, it'd be something they'd have to manage someday. So.
Well, when you ask the question about who's going to profit from this, my mind goes to how the big pharma profited from mandated vaccines. So from the Minnesota state perspective, well, Rebecca, maybe you should get some homesteaders and some local farmers to get contracts with the state of Minnesota so that we have good homegrown fresh products going to our system. And then you can donate part of your profits to the Libertarian Party.
Absolutely. So coincidentally, because of my involvement with, farmers markets, small ag, local, producers around here, I was part of a state funded, I won't say it wasn't a program, but it was kind of like there was somebody there trying to push the program onto the school district in Bemidji. And because I was the contact for our farmers market, that kind of stuff, it kind of filtered through me. And I got to go to this talk, right? And it was small farmers or small farm producers going to the schools. It was Bemidji High School, and then being able to take some of what we grew to the high school. And then the person from the state was like, hey, this is what we want. We want more locally produced vegetables and fruits and that kind of stuff. The problem is that to be able to, the school in Bemidji, and I don't know if this is the way it is in the rest of the state, but the schools don't resume school until Labor Day weekend, right? So beginning of September. But up here, our first frost is around that same time period. So we start freezing. I've seen it freeze here. Well, okay. I've seen it freeze in September 6th. We've already got, flurries, frost on the ground, that kind of stuff. But trying to have produce vegetables, gardening, that kind of thing up here has a significant set of challenges because of our weather and our climate. And so to be able to maintain for a school district, to be able to continually have this, produce that's being brought in to feed a significant number of children, right? So Bemidji School Districts was 5,000 kids before COVID. Once COVID happened, lost 500 students that just never came back. So they either went to homeschooling or someplace else. They didn't return to Bemidji School District. But still, 4,500 kids is what we have in the school district right now. And trying to maintain enough vegetables, locally grown, grains, fruits, that in a zone 3, and then do that through the winter.
That's one of the things. That's one of the things about the word maintain, right? So when things fluctuate, like the market or whatever the case, whether but you have something written in a law and that says you must provide this, well, then whatever cost it takes, and then it just becomes a money pit when logical, rational reasoning can modify that when you don't have it written in a damn law or ordinance or whatever, right? And
the infrastructure that would have to go into place to maintain the amount of food that we would need for a school district this size through all the months when absolutely nothing is going to grow outside is a significant undertaking. And Bemidji School District's already $5 million over budget. They're already financially in the hole. So what do you do?
Well, and I don't know where you called it zone 3, but even the Twin Cities metro area, it gets cold.
It's a zone. So Minnesota is right on the Iowa border, on the southern border of Minnesota, is kind of zone 5. Like that's where you start to see your changes in the USDA zoning. And then the further north you go, the colder it gets. So up here, we have less than 15 days on average over 85. And you need 3 days straight of 85 just for tomatoes to ripen. So,
well, it makes me wonder then, I'm guessing that most of the state of Minnesota would not be able to provide enough fresh produce for all schools in the state of Minnesota through the winter.
You would have to, there would be a lot of planning that would have to happen to make it work. I mean, a significant, I don't know how many kids are in the entire state in the school districts, but we would need to rely on more than just California for our vegetables.
The best way to figure that out is grassroots, and not somebody in St. Paul telling Bemidji what is best for supplying food for that school or for anything like that. That is, and I think everybody would naturally agree to something. After that discussion, would say, "Hey, it doesn't make any sense that a state senator from Red Wing is going to know what is best for the community in Bemidji for their school."
Right. So I ran for school board last election cycle, and one of the things that I like to talk about a lot to people was, like the food deserts. And there's food deserts all over the United States. So the food desert, I think it's like 10 miles, something like that. So if you aren't 10 miles within a significant source of like a grocery store or something like that, you are considered to be in a food desert. And I think it's like 20% to Minnesota. But the further north you go, the more likely you are to be in a food desert because, there's just not much up here, right? Mm-hmm. But to be able to, so one of the things I talked about like a lot when I was running for school board was, it would be really great if the schools or there was some sort of, not using the state money, but there would need to be some way to have like greenhouses, that kind of stuff, turn it into an ag program. We have a significant amount of disproportionate age group in farmers in the United States, right? That are older and on the verge of retiring. And so there's going to be this age gap in farmers where there's needs to be, filled for future producers. So if there was this possibility of, while kids were in school, teaching them how to garden, how to grow, how to produce, and then turning around and using it in the schools, and it's just recycling. But there was, obviously, I'm not on the school board, so I'm gonna say, but I thought it would be neat.
There must be like 4-H and stuff in at the Bemidji school, but I guess I don't know how political that gets. I think I've heard that, and maybe it was talking with you, or it's just not even there.
No, we have 4-H in this area, but it's very disorganized.
Yeah,
no FFA either.
I don't have much experience with that, but I just remember when I was in a small school down in Oklahoma, where actually that's where I'm at now in Oklahoma. But 4-H was a big deal, and man, we had a rodeo in the high school instead of a football field and all kinds of cool stuff. And I think
that sounds awesome, actually.
I really do think Oklahoma, of a lot of the travels I've done in this country, there's a lot of libertarian views in Oklahoma. It's funny that there's more pot stores in this Fort Sill town of Lawton, Oklahoma, or Altus, Oklahoma, than anywhere I've been in Southern California.
I bet that's getting a little soldiers on Fort Sill in trouble.
It's so crazy. I wonder how that works with all obviously the most of the population, but it's almost like a double. There's a wife or family members as well that probably live here too. And there's the market for that and all the locals, but it's definitely all medical. So it's not recreational, but there's still unbelievable amount of stores. And I just thought that's funny. And the libertarian aspect of a lot of other things that I've noticed in Oklahoma, as far as allowing neighbors to be who they are, what they, what I mean, and have the different diversity.
Oklahoma is the only state in the country that has homeschooling in part of its constitution.
There you go. Okay.
And obviously in Minnesota, we don't, because we live in a communist state, but Oklahoma is a little different in that manner.
Yeah.
So getting back to your question about Minnesota, I would like to know what the process is going to be for your Cisco's or whatever, negotiating the contract. How transparent, who's allowed to compete? Is it going to be a lowest bidder going to get the contract? In which case, what are we going to have? Free lunches, yes, but it's but your vegetables are going to be Fritos.
Yeah, gross.
I think back to when Reagan was in office, and I don't remember if it got passed, but I remember the conversation of the day being that Reagan's administration was trying to get ketchup classified as a vegetable for school lunches.
Well, that same conversation happened during the Obama administration around pizza as well. I don't. That was a trope. I'm not particularly sure whether it was an official classification or not, but
I'm going to Google
the
that.
The joke was tomatoes. Sure, they're a fruit, but everybody thinks of them as a vegetable. So because there's tomato sauce on pizza, pizza's a vegetable now.
I think ketchup is really disgusting, personally.
I prefer chili sauce, actually.
Yeah, it's just gross. But I mean,
I think we, as a Libertarian Party of Minnesota, somebody should take it upon themselves to at least keep tabs on the contract awarding process.
Oh, I remember eating Sodexo meals when I was in undergrad, so
there you go.
I will be keeping an eye on this.
Okay, all right.
How do you do that though? I'm trying to find some specific legislation that I'm interested in, and I've searched that dang stuff, and maybe that's words that I just don't understand too, and that's really ticking me off as far as the language and bills. And
the short answer is you have to know people who are willing to look it for you.
Oh, we have a Joey. That sounded like you were volunteering.
Yeah,
not exactly. That was not exactly what was happening. Is that I was confiding in you that even I don't know how to find this stuff. I just know somebody who I think might know how to find it.
So there you go. You're not the guy.
So we have a Joey with connections. That's what I just heard.
That's a dangerous path.
It is. That's true too.
Yeah, I'm not sure I want to burn that contact out.
Back to talking about the school lunches. Did we talk about how it's actually being paid for? Did they add a tax, or like the family leave, they're adding tax?
Okay, let me.
What are they using the surplus that they had last year?
Well, see, that's okay. If that's the case, then you have a finite amount to talk about something that you're planning to just continue to maintain. Back to that word maintain. And if you have this amount, and I mean, doesn't anybody ever realize that never works?
Well, it shouldn't be a problem when you consider all the people moving to Minnesota from, oh, wait, it's the other way around. People are leaving the state.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah,
and then
we'll probably end up losing, seats from, because I know the talk has been at least that we're going to go from 8 congressional districts down to 7 potentially in the next 10 years or so. That's a significant amount of people leaving the state, but other like deeply in blue states like California, Washington, I mean, they're all in the same situation. People are leaving.
Yep. Yeah. So then they're going to be added districts in other places, other states like Oklahoma, I'm sure.
Yeah. Well, and the people that are leaving, they're going to be the ones that are helping with the tax revenue, right? So they're going to be the ones that are being hurt the most by the high taxes. That's why they're leaving.
Or the forced family leave that they're talking in 3 years, in January 2026. Everybody in Minnesota is going to be eligible to say, hey, I'm sick for 20 weeks, or, it's just going to be another racket. But, and I'm all for an employer offering something like this if that's what they want to do. But to be forced, now you're forcing these employers to just get hosed. So imagine how much of that, small businesses included, especially, is just going to go away. Right? Only the people that can afford that kind of stuff are going to be corporations. And then how do they, it seems plainly obvious to me that's the case, right?
Well, then you should run for office.
Yeah. Well, but what is confusing though is that it's not that plainly obvious. And what I need to realize and learn how to do is convey this message. And why is it so obvious to me that you can't add these numbers and expect that it's going to work? Or you look at the history of any government, any of these programs like this. And
well, it's the same thing that we had of the pandemic. The mom and pop stores closed, but the Walmarts did not.
Exactly.
And it was just an extension of Obama or whomever bailing out the banks, saying they're too big to fail. We can't allow them to fail.
Right.
And yet small businesses are failing right and left. I actually don't know the latest count as to how many small businesses closed up and now empty storefronts, in Minnesota and wherever.
It was in the tens of thousands, I want to say. There were a ton of businesses that just went out of business. Now, granted, there could be just one person type of business, but that was that one person's dream that they should have had that ability to fulfill. And
well, I personally know several people who moved to Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and they took their business with them. They were, 1 and 2 man shops kind of thing, and they just took their business to South Dakota.
Well, I know here in Bemidji, I had friends that they had things that would have met the qualifications under COVID to be able to remain open by being essential business or, something like that. They met the qualifications by what they had in their shop, and they had to turn in a application to the state to be able to remain open, and it was denied. And so then after that, what do you do? Like, they're saying, well, you're not good enough. I mean, who do you go to next to complain about that? There is nobody else. And even if there is, the process, like if you were even able to figure that out, the process of being able to figure that out by that time would have just sunk you already. Like, you needed something that happened quickly. Nothing happens quickly in Minnesota, not when you involve the state.
Especially the government. Well, exactly. And that's when they were talking about I think it was the family leave. I was listening to some folks talking about it today. And one lady had called in. She was a state representative, and she left one of those messages and said, apply the same logic where of like the how we just pass a bill and then we'll figure it out in 3 years, right? We got till 2026. While the House, okay, every 2 years there's an election, so there's going to be newcomers, hopefully, right? But if everything is a status quo, here we go. So we got till 2026 to figure it out. When does that is the most inefficient way to just, hey, we make this in stone and then we have this deadline and now we have to make it so. We have to make whatever this goal is. And on their website, and I was looking it up today, how, we'll have more updates later. We'll have more updates later. And I'm sure that's going to be the same for at least a year and a half.
It's just another page out of Pelosi's. We have to pass the bill to see what's in it.
That's what I was trying to think of that earlier, right? And so when the lady had called in, talked about, well, let's use this same logic for the gun laws or something like that. As far as, hey, let's just I forgot how it goes, so never mind. I'm totally blanking on the analogy there. Now I had it, and then I just lost it. So
on Twitter, getting back to the school lunches on Twitter, who is Governor Waltz, made a post about it, and I commented on the post about free lunches and overtaxing and 17 billion surplus, and there is a significant amount of portion of Minnesotans that are very happy with being overtaxed. Apparently,
it's amazing, isn't it?
How do you, like, when you have that level of what is it, cognitive dissonance? How do you even overcome that when you're talking to that kind of person? Or they were equating, well, you don't want our taxes to be paying for free school lunches for everybody. Clearly, you just want the kids to starve. Like,
that's a lot of folks went there on the Twitter there. I was following that too, and you're not saying the same thing.
You can't even talk to those people that are just like, well, clearly you just want all the children to die because you don't want to pay extra taxes for school lunches. What do you?
When I see stuff like that, my thought process is, okay, so right now it's meals, but what are they going to do next? Are they going to say, oh yeah, the state of Minnesota should provide free shoes to any child enrolled in a public school?
Well, don't give
and by
them
the way,
ideas.
everyone's got to be going to public schools now.
Stop it now.
Then between the ages of what is it now, 4, because they include preschool, it's E through 12 instead of K to 12. So now it's going to be every Minnesotan child from the ages of 4 to 18 is going to have their shoes provided to them by the state. And then when they turn 18, now all of a sudden they can vote, and it's been normalized to them that the state provides them with shoes. So they're going to say, well, where are my adult shoes? Like, why isn't the state giving me shoes anymore? Like, well, what's wrong? Why are all of these people so heartless that they aren't willing to pay for the state to give me shoes again?
Well, and those kinds of people also, they're not going to use logic at all. Like, this is complete. They've rejected the need for logic.
Yeah, it's complacency. It is complacency and mental shortcuts. And that's why I'm saying the next thing it's going to be something like shoes. Not necessarily shoes, but I believe that's a stereotype. That's one of the trope arguments that's been floated around for a while, is if we spent 18 years with the government providing everybody with shoes, if somebody then advocated that we should have private companies be able to make and sell shoes, and maybe the state shouldn't be the only way that you can get shoes, people would go, oh, do you want people to go with bare feet?
Even though the shoes are crap by that time, the shoes are really shitty.
Oh yeah, probably.
It doesn't, and they're still but there's Social Security. Imagine that. It's something that just happened, and then all of a sudden we know it's all shitty, but how dare you talk about reforming that?
The government's always going to employ the lowest bidder, right? So you're not going to get good shoes, even if that, but with circular reasoning, right? So the government wants the kids in the school at an early age, early learners, whatever it is they call it, right? So pre-K now. And then you go into kindergarten, spend all day. And we were talking about this earlier, where, like, when I was a kid, when you were in kindergarten, you were either the AM kindergarten or the PM kindergarten, but you didn't spend all day in kindergarten. And then 1st grade through 12th grade, you're in the public indoctrination schools. And I just actually we have in the chat, T.C. Pearson from the Minnesota Black Robe Regiment. And he's got a podcast too, but I can't.
We've got Dr. Rechtenwald on tonight, actually.
Yeah, absolutely. So after this, go watch his. But he, in the chat, he says, I tell all homeschooling families to do nothing at all with the state indoctrination centers. And yet, because they're just, like they have those kids, and then they're going to have the school lunches, breakfast and lunch, free meal. And then those kids are going to end up being the same ones arguing on Twitter saying, but the government has to provide these. How, if you don't agree with me, obviously you just want everybody to starve, as if there's just no alternative to that whatsoever.
Yeah. Well, but in their minds, there is no alternative because they don't know how to do it.
Right. Yeah, they've never experienced anything other than it being handed to them. So why would they believe that there was another possibility?
Yeah.
It's a very interesting thing where I wish, I'm not even a real fan of someone else teaching my kids how to be critical thinkers. That's still something that I enjoy teaching them with our life experiences together, where when I grew up, my dad didn't hesitate 1 minute to take me out of a day of school to spend a day with him doing something, building something or whatever, because and I've always had that philosophy with my boys growing up. My one son has graduated now, and if I had an opportunity to take a day and go spend it with them, it's 100% worth more than spending a day with the government teachers. And my wife is a government teacher. Okay. So it's not like I still believe it's just the indoctrination part of it that I think the state part of it is the bad part.
Well, I mean, there's like the idea of schools was that to provide a quality education for everybody across the board, because at some, there have been points in time in history where only families who are very wealthy could pay to send their kids to school. So the idea behind it, I mean, it's kind of, it started out for a good reason, but as anything, it gets taken and manipulated into this. Well, now we get to turn these kids into teach them whatever we want, and this is what we want them to learn. And then at the same time, parents are busy and they're spending less time with their kids. So there's like that, that natural bond that you have between parents and children is tested while they're at school all day long, every day. And by the time they hit 18, they move out. And I think it's like 90. I just watched something recently about parenting. And it was that 90% of your interaction with your children happens before they're 18 years old. And so it's only the last 10% of the time that you get to interact with your kids through their lives and your lives happens after 18. And it's just so you have this short window of opportunity with your children. And that's what I love about homeschooling, is that I can have that time, that even if they, we're making sure make sure they do school and have an education, but you can't replace that time once you lose it.
And I get a kick out of the argument that one of the advantages of public schools is so that the kids learn social skills. and I'm thinking, wait a minute, you want your 5-year-old to learn social skills from another 5-year-old? Do you know that 5-year-old's parents and what they're teaching that child about how to interact with people? I don't want my kid to learn social skills from other kids. I want to teach them social skills.
Well, homeschoolers get a bad rap, right, for being weird and kind of awkward in public. But the weirdest kids I know all came from public school. I was one of them. I was super timid and awkward, and I still kind of am sometimes, but working on that. And I was public school kid, so your environment has very little to do with who you just kind of naturally are and have to overcome as you grow older.
Well, and you kind of touched on a very tangential topic about how little influence parents really have over their kids. And it's so easy as parents to blame ourselves if our kids, what's the old thing, they got into the wrong crowd or whatever, and I'm guilty of that to some extent because, my son had his share of challenges. And one of the best things that I was told is just flat out statistics. how many more people have influence over your kids than you do, throughout childhood. So you cannot take credit for things your kid does, and you also shouldn't blame yourself for things your kid does, because you are a very small influence over your child growing up.
Mostly, I think it's important just to have that basis. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but
I think you're about to say pretty much what I was about to say, actually.
The basis of like leaving, that relationship between you and your kid, so that if and when something does happen, that the lines of communication are open and you can help them through it, So, I mean, you can't protect them from everything, but you can't, if you've like cultivated that bond and made sure that is strong and your relationship is strong and healthy, that no matter what it is through life, that you'll be able to work on that together. So, and I think that's very important too.
That's a big thing. Trust, I think, is what it takes to glue all that right there in the trust, and where folks talk about, I'm not your friend, I'm your parent, or, but I like to have fun with my kids, right? And we do some things that, man, growing up, it was just me and my old man, and there's bachelor time where even I was 7 years old and there was R-rated movies or whatever, you know what I'm saying? Like there's just, my old man was quite a libertarian as well. And so I think my boys growing up that way, it really enhances the free thinking, or, hey, you make your own decision on how you're going to go down this mountain or climb up this mountain or navigate this river or whatever the case we're doing. And that's where I think when you said basis of communication, I was thinking when you're saying it, a base of that critical thinking ability. And I have the trust that my boys will get in with a bad crowd, maybe. But while they're in that bad crowd, they'll make a better decision to stay away from the real trouble with that bad crowd. And I know that's exactly how I grew up. I was with some folks that were not good folks, and I stay on the perimeter and either stop being an idiot or see you later.
Yeah, well, and like I have an adult daughter all the way down to an infant at home, right? So I have a wide range of ages here. And my older kids, especially my daughters, like I want them to, like, if you're in a situation that you don't know how to get out of, just call me, and I will come, I understand, and I will just be there. And so like having that ability but having that, person in your life, which, kids who have parents who are just involved and active, that's what naturally that, is supposed to turn into. Right. So, and this is kind of, I don't know, we're turning more into like, parenting this evening and
parenting. Well, I actually kind of wanted to shout out TC again with the Tuttle twins, going back to schooling, right? Where I know once we talked about homeschooling and things, I think it was when I was chatting with you and Harrison and about the curriculum and stuff like that, right? Where there's so much free information, and maybe I think the Tuttle twins or Ron Paul, I don't know if it's free or not, but
not free.
No, okay. Is it so? I don't know if you want to share the exact amount or.
I don't know it off the top of my head, but it was out of my price range.
Really, for the Tuttle twins
or
the Ron Paul?
Not Tuttle twins, Ron Paul stuff. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of disappointing, but I get it. It's capitalism.
I mean, I've got 8 kids in school right now, so my budget is a lot smaller than other people's families. So
yeah, it looks like Tuttle Twins books are $10 a piece on the Tuttle Twins website, and they've got combo packs and whatnot for a little bit cheaper.
Well, imagine if we did go to a school choice type voucher system, right? Where then you're 8 kids in school, and imagine the savings still, where you would then have the. I feel like I'm being redundant because I know we went over this once before, but
that was a different podcast, though, so we can.
So it was, again, maybe we weren't talking about here. E through 12 is well over 50% of the Minnesota budget, of where they have to use 1,000 millions now, right? Because a billion is, it's 52,000 million, which is a funny number that they put on there because, well, it's stretching out, and I can't wait to see when it's 25 million. But anyways, so it's $52 billion, and cut that into however many students, and we get 15,000, or I don't remember what the hell it is, but considering all the kids, imagine I think it's like 30,000, but imagine having that vouchers, right, and allowing folks to just go and give half that amount. They cut the budget in half, and you'd still thrive and decentralize the whole damn thing. I don't know what kind of revolution it would take to really get folks into something like that, but I think that's really what it takes.
Yeah, I know that in Bemidji, per student in the school district, and like I said, there's 4,500 kids in the school district. It's $38,000 per kid spent every year while they're in public school. So I don't know, Joey, you're the math person. What's 38,000 times 4,500?
$171 million.
Did you just do that in your head, or do you have a calculator?
I have I have a calculator.
You knew you were going to ask him that. That's
well,
how awesome
I was just shocked hearing that it was 38,000 a student when you had already said it was 4,500 students.
Yeah, per child per year.
Yeah, that is a total school district cost in the neighborhood of $171,000 per annum.
Yeah, and that's not an abnormal amount. I mean, that's a little high in Minnesota, but Minnesota schools, that's about roundabout what kids, how much is spent per child per school
Minnesota
year.
lavishes its school districts in money.
But clearly it's working, because look at their test scores.
So there you go. There's where the message is so clear as day to me, right? You say, here are the results. Okay, results can vary as far as whatever, right? But regardless, you can just see what $1.something million in Bemidji School District is doing for even just the facility. I'm sure you just look and think, this $1 million every year, and we're doing this.
Yeah, someone in the chat is saying holla vouchers. I mean, obviously government funding through taxation or through debt is wrong, but if parents were given the per kid funding pocketed by school districts right now, my goodness.
I'm gonna hold on. 38.
I still think it would be better.
If we were that is a lot of money. Yes. If we were given if we were given,
what would that be for you? 30-something thousand a year for 8 kids.
$304,000.
$304,000.
Well,
do you think you could run a household off of only $300,000 a year? I don't know.
That's the racket, right? You give the incentive. It's obviously going to create a racket, but hey, it's not a bad one if you're just going to start popping out kids. We definitely need the population boost.
I'm done. Sorry.
That's a whole different discussion, I suppose.
Well, when you have a
Rebecca, isn't that what you said after the last one?
That's when you have a homeschool situation. Actually,
okay, this is a semi-serious question. When you have a homeschooling situation, or let's say you have a co-op of homeschooling, how many kids do you have before there has to be a principal or some level of administration? Because that's where all the money goes.
Don't introduce more levels of administration and bureaucracy.
Yeah, wait a second.
At my house, I am the administration.
Yes.
Yeah, there it is.
And the principal.
And the school nurse.
And the school nurse. Yep. And
so wait, what are you getting at, Kevin? Those are administrative offices that need to be fulfilled and written off and employed and.
If you're going to get $38K a year, you're going to have to hire somebody to file your
right. So at this point, considering Rebecca's household, in other words, her population of students, then not only should she get the allotment for per child, but she also should be paid as an administrator and for the school nursing. We could eliminate an awful lot of overhead by letting the parents. Well, what a concept! Let the parents raise their own kids.
I'm not actually opposed to this idea. I think this could work out very well in my favor.
I'll be honest.
You could become a pillar of your community by employing your entire community to help raise your kids.
Heck yeah. I saw a little video today about Shaquille O'Neal talking about how he incorporated his family, and it was a financial guy that was showing this video and saying, "Yep, this is what you should do." Because at the end of the video, he goes, "Why the IRS going to get my money and my family should?" Well, Duh. Why do you got to go through that bullshit to keep your own damn money?
You got to explain to the government why
everybody
it's a
just see
business
this?
expense to keep your household running.
These people are getting rich. This bald guy that's on, no offense, Kevin Press, trust me, but this bald guy, he's got this show, but he says, oh, let me teach you how to work around the government loopholes. And loopholes is a dumb word. It's freedom. Hey, this is not a loophole. It's freedom. F the loophole. Why even make the incentive for having it in the first place?
Tell you,
freedoms are the loopholes for the common man.
Right. When I started my own consulting business, for my case, it was freelance writing, but I organized as an LLC and all that. One of the smartest pieces of advice I got was to pay my kid to do work for me.
That was it. That was part of it.
Yeah, because you can call it you can call it an allowance, but instead of just giving them an allowance to pick up stuff, you actually put them on your payroll, and then you get payroll tax deductions, and you end up having, your kid gets allowance, but instead of getting it from you, it's a win-win. So it's
this guy actually paid his son and then paid his son's tuition for private school from his son's checking account while his kids was growing up, and towards a 401k or whatever. And so by the time he graduated, he had all this, and that's awesome things that people could have done while I was growing up, or maybe even my son, if I would have thought of that before.
Yeah.
I think all that is fugazi right now. That the way the dollar is right now, people that made all that money, they're awesome and well off right now. But there's no way that shit is going to work for another 18 years.
And I remember the big brouhaha when Trump's taxes were made public, and his response to the fact that he didn't pay as much in taxes as people thought, and he said that just means I'm a smart.
That makes me smart.
Yeah. Without that, but you got to admit, it's like, yeah, why should anybody pay taxes? It's just going to get disappeared into some slush fund anyway.
Well, if you're not cheating, you're not trying. So
that's right.
Or the one I see a lot of normies say a lot of times is the why do we have to do all the figuring out and then file, and then they tell us whether we're right or wrong? It's like all that bullshit is just like a racket again for the tax preppers.
Well, the IRS still owes us, I think it's like $4,200 from the taxes from 2021. And we've sent in the paperwork and, filed, done everything we can. And they sent us something back acknowledging they got our papers.
To get any information out of the IRS.
That's just, that money's, we're never going to see that money.
Oh.
I'm waiting for another status report on the 85,000.
Withhold it from their next payment.
That's right. I'm waiting for a status report as to the next IRS agent who shoots somebody in training. That just happened here a few weeks ago.
Did it? I remember
the armed
when they first started talking about them getting armed.
Because there are thousands of armed IRS agents now.
Yeah. Supposedly eventually they're going to have 85,000 new agents, most of them armed. Well, I saw a story here not too long ago where somebody didn't know what they were doing, and they shot one of the fellow trainees. So
wait, how do you?
By violating more than one of the 4 principles of firearms at once. That is how you shoot fellow training.
What's your question?
I don't know what to say. I don't know what to say. I'm trying to imagine an IRS agent from Washington, D.C. showing up to northern rural Minnesota and knocking on the front door, demanding their taxes, and then being met by some, big bearded plaid shirt wearing logger who's probably got an arsenal in their bedroom closet,
I think I remember when I was a kid reading stories about what the colonists did to tax collectors.
Well, that's why they started
That's
taking.
Why they're armed. That's why they're arming.
Tarred and feathered. Yep. That was no joke. It was hot tar. They usually ended up with 3rd-degree burns over most of their body.
Yeah. Well, and you only need 30% of your body to be covered in a 3rd-degree burn before it kills you. So I'm just full of useless facts.
That's actually good to know.
Yeah.
Wow.
Doesn't take much. So
Remember, everybody, your skin is an organ.
So did anybody see check out Joe Biden come to town today?
My gosh. We should have brought this up earlier. I have a lot to say about that.
I didn't even know he was in town. What was he doing besides tripping upstairs?
I only caught like the last 2 minutes of his stage.
He's coming to talk about rural towns to help support farming
you sound
and
like
agriculture.
you're Joe Biden trying to read a teleprompter.
Maybe that's what we need to talk about next week. I'm going to need more than an hour for that, more than 10 minutes for that.
Well, I remember I was working in Marietta, Georgia, and it was for Lockheed Martin, actually, where they have they make some planes there, whatever. So I was working on site, and they were the second day. They're like, "Hey, the vice president's coming in, so we gotta leave the airfield." And so we left, and we were at this McDonald's down the road, and the traffic was packed for like an hour and a half, 2 hours, while the motorcade had to go through, and it just built everything up, just clogged arteries. We couldn't even leave the damn restaurant for like an hour and a half. And I was pretty darn conservative at that time, and I was really hating him. You know, what in the F? What business you got to come down here when I could have just kept working and land your damn plane and get your ass off the runway, and I'm just fine.
Was that Obama?
That was Biden. Oh. He was only vice president, and he did all this stuff. And whatever, they're going to do it also for Kamala or whoever, right? That's just the way they are. It really drove me nuts to witness that. And I was wondering, you know, what if happened in the cities today or wherever they went. Try that in a small town. I'm sure they didn't get a very good reception. And wherever they went, rural Minnesota hates Democrats.
They wouldn't get a warm reception here. We still have people that, in contrast, who when Trump came to Bemidji, I can't remember what year was that they ran. Was that in 22? And Trump came to Bemidji. And so our little town of 15,000 people became like 45,000 overnight or something like that. It was insane.
Oh, man, yeah.
And like the place where my husband works, this is to the degree of which people had a reaction for Trump showing up. Like they took the metal roofing on their shop, and because it's right next to the airport in Bemidji, and took metal, like things, you know, different colored metal roofing, and wrote Trump on the roof and put those in place and made Trump on the roof. It's still there. So every time
I've seen some of those flying into cities.
Yeah, yes, every time you fly into Bemidji, that's one of the first things you see is this giant red Trump on their workshop. But yeah, maybe talk about.
The more and more I learn about Trump, though, the more and more I realize when folks call the Trumpers cultist kind of thing, it's like, yeah, I can't really get behind too much of his bullshit now, but he still didn't deserve all the crap that he got the whole time. You know what I mean? Like, he isn't a Nazi, and there are some good things, but it's still interesting how many people are still so rah for Trump.
Watching it was just kind of like, it was almost like a scene of a movie, you know, just watching people's reaction. And I almost considered the people that I saw that were for Trump acted almost in a rabid manner, like this just overreaction kind of a way. But I'm going to have to cut this short. Sorry, my family just arrived home, so my background noise is about to get really loud. And then maybe next week we should talk about the rural and Biden and all their new farm policies, because no matter what it is, it's going to be disastrous.
Apparently that crowd was full of all DFL legislators and their big donors. I wonder what they thought of 169 as they were driving all the way down to Fairmont from the Twin Cities.
They came to Fairmont?
That's where the farm is, I believe. The farm that they Dutch Creek Farms.
Oh man, I'm from Google, Fairmont. I got to find out what happened.
Yeah.
It might be Faribault.
That's not what the Google said. I mean, I could have
All
been
right.
wrong.
Well,
but
now I'm going to have to find out. In fact,
Yeah,
my wife tonight is in Fairmont for her sister's birthday, so I got
okay.
to
Well,
find
you
out
can
what's
ask
going
them
on.
how many expensive black cars passed them on the way down.
Yeah.
And mind you, that is Martin County, Minnesota, which is the most socially conservative county in the state.
Uh-huh.
Well,
They
Democrats aren't known for their good sense, right?
yeah, they found the one farm that was willing to accept them as a backdrop, and they showed up there.
Yep,
And
that'll
like
do
all
it.
good carpetbaggers, they showed up, they got their photo op, and they left.
Yep, yep.
All right. Well, next week, same time, same place, lpmn.org. If you want more information about the party, or if you would like to join, donate, any of that kind of stuff, information about where we have our affiliates are meeting or who's meeting and where that's all happening. Anyways, it's all on the website, lpmn.org. And see y'all next week.